Most people enter their 20s thinking they have all the time in the world. They chase comfort, ignore discipline, and make small daily choices that seem harmless, until decades later, when those same choices quietly cost them wealth, freedom, and opportunities. The 20s are often portrayed as a decade of freedom, exploration, and opportunity. Society celebrates it as a time to travel, experiment, take risks, and find yourself. But beneath the excitement, for most people, the 20s are also a decade of regret. It is a period where decisions, or lack of decisions, quietly shape the rest of life. By the time someone reaches their 30s, 40s, or beyond, they often look back on their 20s and realize that countless small choices, missed opportunities, and unexamined habits have accumulated into consequences far larger than they expected. One of the main reasons most people regret their 20s is that they fail to take full ownership of their lives during this decade. Early adulthood is often framed as a period of experimentation, and while exploration has value, it can become a convenient excuse for avoiding responsibility. Many young adults drift through school, jobs, relationships, and lifestyle choices without considering long-term impact. Decisions are made impulsively, emotionally, or based on social norms, rather than consciously with the future in mind. During this time, people often underestimate the compounding effect of habits, skills, and relationships. Every choice made in your 20s accumulates silently over time. A habit as simple as saving a small portion of income, reading consistently, learning a new skill, or building meaningful relationships can have exponential impact decades later. Conversely, small daily habits of distraction, poor time management, or prioritizing instant gratification over long-term growth quietly steal opportunities. The cost of these choices is invisible until years later, at which point regret often sets in. Many people also regret their 20s because they fail to invest in themselves. This is not just about money, but about effort, focus, and energy. The 20s are a rare period where time is abundant, health is generally strong, and risk tolerance is high. Yet most individuals spend these years prioritizing temporary pleasures or passive comfort over building foundational skills, developing discipline, and creating momentum for the future. This choice may feel harmless in the moment, but it quietly limits future potential. By the 30s, people often realize that years of lost momentum are difficult to recover. Another reason for regret is poor decision-making in relationships. Romantic, professional, and social connections all carry disproportionate weight during these formative years. Choosing who to spend time with, who to learn from, and who to align with can either accelerate growth or slow it dramatically. Many people in their 20s follow social pressure or convenience rather than evaluating whether relationships are adding value or holding them back. By the time they reflect on these years, it becomes clear that certain relationships wasted time, energy, and emotional resources. Financial mismanagement is another silent source of regret. Most people underestimate the power of financial habits established in early adulthood. A few decades of small savings, intelligent investments, or avoidance of unnecessary debt can drastically alter one's financial freedom. Conversely, careless spending, accumulating credit card debt, and ignoring long-term planning can create consequences that linger for decades. The choices that feel insignificant in the moment, buying new gadgets, ordering takeout, or maintaining expensive routines, can quietly compound into hundreds of thousands of dollars lost over time. By their 30s, many realize they could have built wealth far faster if only they had prioritized discipline early. Time management and prioritization are additional areas where people often fail in their 20s. It is a decade where distraction is rampant. Social media, entertainment, nightlife, and peer influence all compete for attention. The brain naturally seeks comfort, convenience, and short-term satisfaction, which can easily dominate decision-making. The result is that days, months, and years can pass almost unnoticed, leaving many with the bitter awareness that time itself has been wasted. Unlike money, lost time cannot be recovered, and this is often one of the deepest sources of regret. Another contributing factor is fear. Many young adults avoid challenging opportunities, uncomfortable conversations, or high-stakes decisions out of fear of failure, judgment, or uncertainty. They wait for the right moment or convince themselves they are not ready yet. But the 20s are exactly when risk-taking carries relatively low long-term consequences and high potential upside. Avoiding calculated risks can mean missing the chance to learn, grow, and create options for the future. When reflected upon years later, these unseized opportunities often appear as glaring mistakes or sources of regret. Career choices during the 20s also play a massive role. This is a period when skills, reputation, and professional momentum can be built faster than at almost any other point in life. Yet many young adults drift into jobs that pay adequately but fail to challenge them or develop marketable expertise. Others switch roles too frequently without building depth or specialization. Some stick to safe paths simply because they are socially expected or because they avoid discomfort. Over time, the cumulative effect of these decisions often leads to slower career progression, fewer opportunities, and regret over unutilized potential. Health is another dimension often neglected. In the 20s, the body recovers quickly and energy levels are high. Yet many ignore nutrition, exercise, and sleep because the consequences seem distant. Small choices to skip workouts, eat poorly, or ignore mental health may feel harmless, but by the 30s and 40s, the consequences compound in physical, mental, and emotional ways. Those who prioritize health early often enjoy a far higher quality of life, fewer medical limitations, and more energy to pursue goals, while those who neglect it frequently face avoidable struggles. Finally, mindset and self-perception play a critical role. Many individuals enter their 20s with limited awareness of personal responsibility, financial literacy, and the long-term impact of daily choices. They are influenced heavily by societal expectations, peer behavior, and cultural narratives rather than critical thinking. Over time, this lack of intentionality accumulates, producing regret. That stems from realizing they could have optimized their choices far more effectively. Those who develop awareness early, on the other hand, use their 20s to build a foundation that compounds advantageously for the rest of their lives. The truth about the 20s is that it is both the most forgiving and the most dangerous decade simultaneously. It is forgiving because there is still time to course correct, learn, and grow. Mistakes made in your early 20s can be corrected with effort, discipline, and awareness. Yet it is dangerous because habits, patterns, and priorities established during this decade tend to define future trajectories. The same decisions repeated daily form the invisible architecture of decades ahead, silently shaping wealth, health, career, and relationships. Most people do not regret their 20s because of a single catastrophic failure. They regret them because of countless small choices, repeated unconsciously, that slowly add up to lost potential, unleveraged opportunities, and avoidable hardship. By the time they reflect, they realize that growth, wealth, and fulfillment could have arrived earlier if only they had been intentional. The hardest part of recognizing regret is that it is often invisible while it happens. Daily life feels normal. Comfort, routine, and social norms mask the long-term consequences of decisions. Ordering takeout, skipping savings, avoiding challenging opportunities, or procrastinating important goals all feel ordinary at the moment. The brain rationalizes these choices, justifying them as deserved or harmless. Only years later does the true cost reveal itself, creating a painful contrast between what was possible and what actually happened. Self-awareness is the antidote to this pattern. People who avoid regret develop the habit of evaluating daily actions in terms of long-term impact. They recognize that small choices compound, not just in finance, but in knowledge, skills, relationships, health, and time. By consistently making decisions aligned with long-term goals, they create leverage that accelerates personal growth and future freedom. Each decision becomes a building block rather than a fleeting moment of comfort. Financial literacy is one of the most important skills that influences regret. Most people treat money passively, responding to circumstances rather than actively designing their financial future. Early attention to saving, investing, and understanding how money grows over time can transform decades of earnings into lasting security. Conversely, ignoring these principles creates stress, dependence, and frustration that reverberate well beyond the 20s. Money is not the only factor, but it is a clear and measurable one where intentional action produces compounding results. Relationships, too, require deliberate attention. The 20s are a formative period for social and professional connections. Choosing mentors, peers, partners, and communities that elevate growth can create opportunities that last a lifetime. Poor choices, toxic relationships, or excessive focus on temporary pleasures may seem harmless in the moment but quietly diminish potential. Relationships act as accelerators or brakes in life, magnifying the effect of choices made during this critical decade. Career decisions have a similarly compounding effect. Learning in-demand skills, seeking challenging projects, and building a professional network early accelerates future earning potential and independence. Conversely, complacency, fear of risk, and avoidance of challenging opportunities slow growth and can leave decades of potential unrealized. The 20s are when momentum can be built faster than any other period in life, yet many squander this advantage due to short-term thinking. Health is another invisible factor. Young adults often underestimate the long-term impact of physical and mental habits. Exercise, nutrition, sleep, and stress management may feel optional, but over time, they shape energy, cognitive capacity, resilience, and productivity. Maintaining good health in your 20s multiplies the value of other efforts, while neglecting it creates limitations that become increasingly difficult to overcome. Perhaps the most important factor is mindset. The people who avoid regret understand the compounding power of awareness and discipline. They treat every day as a chance to make a decision that benefits the future, rather than only pursuing instant gratification. They recognize that freedom, wealth, health, and fulfillment are not the results of luck or opportunity alone. They are the result of repeated, intentional choices over time. Regret often comes from believing that time is abundant and consequences are distant. Yet the decades ahead are determined not by singular events, but by the accumulation of daily actions. Skipping savings, ignoring learning, neglecting relationships, and avoiding challenges all appear harmless. Yet they quietly determine the trajectory of life. Awareness and intentionality allow the 20s to become the launching pad rather than a wasted decade. By reflecting on these truths, it becomes clear why most people regret their 20s. Regret is not caused by failure, but by a lack of deliberate action. It is the result of drifting, of prioritizing comfort over growth, and of failing to recognize that small decisions, repeated over time, shape the foundation of a lifetime. Those who internalize this reality treat the 20s as a decade to build momentum, acquire skills, and create leverage, understanding that the choices they make now compound silently into freedom, wealth, and fulfillment in the years to come. The 20s are not merely a time to find yourself or have fun. They are a decisive period where habits, mindset, and priorities set the trajectory for decades ahead. The regret many feel later is a reflection not of their potential, but of opportunities left unleveraged. Intentionality, discipline, and long-term thinking transform the same years that create regret for most into the foundation for extraordinary future outcomes. Those who understand this truth use their 20s not just to survive, but to multiply their potential and reclaim time, energy, and freedom decades in advance.